Hello, probably the best defense for the insurance company when they're fighting an accident case is that they have what's called an incapacitated defense, or a defense basically saying that they couldn't help it. In this video, I'm going to talk about how I was faced with that defense and we overcame it. My clients overcame it and we settled the case for the biggest case of my career, well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you're new to this channel, my name is Darren Woodfork. I'm an attorney here in Scottsdale, Arizona. My firm focuses on car accident cases and sealing old criminal cases. If you've been involved in a car accident case, please get in touch here at 602-284-3035 or reach me at my email at DarrenW, that's DERRONW @MSN.com, and we can help you. So today I'm going to talk about what the insurance company, what their best defense is in a case. I said before, when you file a claim against the insurance company, against a driver who hit you, who caused your accident, they're going to fight you on either one of two different grounds. Either they're going to say it's not their fault, or they're going to say that you're not hurt as bad as you say you are. I would say 80% of the time they will fight you on being you're not hurt as bad as you say you are, but every now and then they'll fight you on fault, and that's what this video is about. When they say it's not their fault, they'll say that it's because the person had a incapacity defense, basically that they can help it. Usually the classic case of this is when there's a heart attack or a stroke and the driver veers off into traffic and causes an accident. That's like the classic incapacitated defense. There's a lot of case law here in Arizona, basically, where the driver was driving down a two-lane street, had a stroke, passed out, swerved into the oncoming lane of traffic, and super a bad accident. But the driver wasn't at fault because they had a stroke or a heart attack, and so the victims couldn't recover, and so that's a ironclad defense to the insurance company. And I tell people that, call me, they're victims of a car accident case, and they're saying that the insurance company is alleging that the defendant had an incapacity defense, or he had a heart attack or a medical condition. And I always tell them, well, if that's true, then that's a real defense. And a lot of people don't, they don't believe it or they don't understand it. But when I explain it this way, and I tell them that, if you're stopped on the streets and there's traffic and you stop behind traffic and somebody comes up behind you and hits you and pushes you into the car in front of you, that's the same thing. It's the same kind of I couldn't help it defense. Basically, if the guy who you hit tries to sue you, you would say, well, I couldn't help it because I got pushed into you in the chain reaction. And that would be a complete defense. The first driver who you hit, they would have a claim against the guy who started it. The third driver, basically, they would have that's who they would sue. But anyways, that's the incapacity part of it. That's the defendant couldn't help it, and that's a complete defense in a car accident case. Now, the issue when we get this case and how I settled the biggest case in my career was basically when somebody says that it has to be legit. They have to prove that they really did have the heart attack or the stroke or whatever, because they can always just say that, when really they were under the influence of alcohol or some other reason, and it's not a legitimate medical condition is why they caused the accident. Or it's also, even if they did have a medical condition, if they ignored like the warnings like you get on the prescription bottles that says not to operate heavy machinery on these when you take this, things like that, if they ignored those warnings, they also are liable for the accident that they caused, and you will be, and as a victim you'll be able to overcome that incapacitated defense. So those are the things that you have to look at when the defendant is alleging that. You just don't take their word for it, essentially, and then you look into the case. Now, with all that said, sometimes, to make them, to find out, basically, you will have to sue them, and you will have to go through litigation, and you will have to go through discovery and all that. And that's what I had to do in this case that we settled for, well into the six figures. We had to go all the way, into litigation until at the very end, the defendant admitted that they didn't really have a medical condition in the case, and we settled the case. But you do have to go through litigation, and you do have to go through all that time, money, expense, and all that to get there. Usually they don't just say it in the beginning. And I'll leave this also when I talked about the three car pileup on the streets or on the freeway or whatever. What's interesting about those cases is that you have three victims. Usually you have two victims for sure. You have the guy who hit, the guy who was first hit, and then the guy who was pushed into the guy in front. But those two victims, and there could be more victims, there may be a bigger chain, but could be multiple victims. Whenever you're in a multi-victim case, it's always kind of complicated and almost kind of funny, because every one of those victims is represented by a lawyer, and each lawyer is representing, their case or whatever. And so a lot of times you have like a pot of money in the settlement, and then the lawyers have to split it up amongst themselves. So then you get the lawyers fighting each other over, who gets how much of the pie. And I think I talked about that in one of these videos. It's called the interpleader action in court. I'll put it up in the card if I can find it, or I'll put it at the end of the video here. But anyways, that's one thing when you have like a three-car pileup. Sometimes you get the lawyers fighting each other over the settlement. So anyways, hope that helps. Like I said, if you're involved in a case and you're thinking about pursuing litigation and you want to know kind of if the defense is legit, that incapacitated defense is the best defense that the insurance company has, and if it is legitimate, it's a complete defense to their case. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I'll talk to you next time. Thanks.